good afternoon, and welcome to the Tetewathá Partyline Talkshow. I'm your host, Len Stacy, and today is MCK Friday, and I'm joined by the Grand Chief, Joe Norton. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Sebu.
How are you?
Not bad.
Not bad? Been busy?
Quite.
All I got was an outline where we're going to talk about some of the political updates. So I guess what's happening in the political realm of things. And I guess right now I'm not sure how that goes with the up-and-coming election that's coming up. I'm sure it's kind of in the stretch in some areas, of impacting on your on the day-to-day kind of stuff. I'm
not sure when you say upcoming elections, you're talking about
the outside elections, not ours. I'm not talking. Okay. I'm outside. I'm talking outside. And I know when you're negotiating, whether it's at the federal level or provincial level, it usually has an impact on this type of year.
Well, it's there's always a common saying across the country, we'll say in Indian world, that it doesn't matter what government it is in, they're all the same. And to a degree, it's like that, but there's levels within government too.
Yeah.
You got the leadership, you got the political leadership, you got people in those positions who like we'll take for instance this the Liberal government headed by Trudeau and company, who made certain, great statements to begin with a couple of years ago, but when it gets into the bureaucracy, it's a different, there's another level there.
Yes.
There's another level at the deputy minister, assistant deputy minister level. Alongside of them is the Justice Department, the lawyers, who advise what to do and not to do. Then it goes down the various levels of bureaucracy, the people that we meet with directly on the tables, what have you. So through that whole, through those layers, there's there's all the differences of opinions, as to what the Prime Minister meant.
Yes.
So we try as much as possible, meaning Kahnawake, I can only speak on behalf of this community, we try as much as possible to try to keep it at the political level. And then from getting political agreements that then filter down into the system to make sure that we reach something interim or reach something long term that's beneficial to us, that doesn't undermine the will of the people here and the things that we've been trying to establish over the years. That's a long version of describing the relationship. So there's been marginal success with the Liberal government and Trudeau. Mind you, a lot of problems in that government, various things have happened over time, and in the last, last almost 4 years now, and it's caused them quite difficulty. And, we can analyze that to death, but we see it and we know it. So you try to give a government or a leadership at least some time to get their act together, and then thereafter the next go around, then possibly some major things can happen. So, from a personal point of view, I'm saying, well, some nice things were said, some good things were done. Let's hope that if this government gets back in, that they'll continue to pursue that. The most important being the first words out of the Prime Minister's mouth was the relationship between Canada and Indigenous people is the most important thing as far as he's concerned. Then of course there's UNDRIP and then reconciliation, nation to nation, and all that stuff. And we keep reminding Canada, that we're allies to them. We're not subjects. We're not Canadian citizens, but we are allies, and therefore we have to deal with each other in that matter. Now, if there's another government comes in, Conservatives comes in with the Prime Minister being Andrew Scheer, well, it's another set of principles that they have, and they shown their colors 10 years ago, or 4 years ago, whenever it was. For 10 years, life was very difficult under Harper, and a lot of that has not changed as far as we understand from their philosophy or approach. As a matter of fact, it may even get more difficult, So we have to be aware and geared for anything that'll come, you know. So with the federal elections, it's one thing. I'm not going to be holding my breath watching TV, but at the same time, the Liberals get back in. All right, well, we have some form of ongoing relationship. But if not, then we have to reorganize, restructure ourselves, and be prepared for what's to come.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of some of the files, what are some of the major files right now?
Well, of course, one of those major files is, and it's during the Liberal regime, is S3.
Yes.
That right away, right off the top, that's the main one. You know, who's entitled to be here, who's recognized, so on and so forth. You know, and we've all had the exposure to between 35,000 to 65,000 potential registrants, you know, and whether they all come back is one thing. But we're already facing that already. People are, you know, knocking on the door, asking questions, and, you know, being very aggressive in terms of, well, my rights. And attached to that, one of the things that scares me is that if we ever come to a point in time regarding the scenery, the settlement of the scenery, the re-recognition that it's our territory, you know, and that the manner in which this community determines the outcome. Canada will be trying to force or enforce that all those who are recognized under S3 must be included in that, you know. So that's a very concerning thing. So you may have potentially, and you've heard me say this before,
yes,
as well as Gus and others. That's of concern because a lot of those people who are eligible under S3 have never lived here, may never live here, but certainly to look at it and say, well, there's some money there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I can get some compensation, you know. So they may just go for the money, and so that's a concern. We look at it. We want the land back.
Right.
That's what we want. We want to be able to utilize the land because that's our land, and we feel that way. Others don't, and we've seen that in the couple of years ago in the settlement in Ontario, the Algonquin settlement, and millions of acres of land given up, and you know, so, and that's forever. That doesn't come back, you know. No. So over here, we have to be on our toes, you know, and ready to do battle, you know.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to K1037, Tetewathá, Partyline Talkshow. Today's MCK Friday, and I'm joined by the Grand Chief Joe Norton. I have a question on the seigneurie. Where is that at right now? Has there been any kind of movement or any push at all?
Not much has happened, and it's not due to the fact of not trying. It's just the manner in which these issues get tied up with who's going to be eligible, who's going to be entitled, who will have a say, you know. So if we can't come to an understanding with Canada on that, then you're not going to go anywhere.
So it stays like at a stalemate.
It stays stalemated at that stage. So we have to overcome that somehow, some way in the next little while. So for now, it's going to stay there. I mean, there's a table that's open, and periodically we go, we meet, we sit, we talk, you know, and once this election is over, we're going to be back there again unless something happens in the next little while and the bureaucrats decide that they want to have a discussion. You know, they were really pushing for discussion in, you know, a week and a half ago or what have you. All of a sudden, they just pulled back after that and they said, no, you know.
Because that's kind of what I was curious to know is, like, how far do they go? And then you know the date of the election, but they've already got the brakes on, you know, right?
Yeah, well, I've seen so much of that over, you know, quite a long time. So it's, I understand that. I don't like it, but I know, you know, that's just to try and keep you at the table.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, let's take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Tetewathá, Partyline Talkshow. I'm your host, Lance Stacy, and today is MCK Friday. I'm joined by the Grand Chief, Joe Norton. I guess, Joe, one of the things why I had brought up that question really had to do with how when government is going into a shift or into a change that kind of affects everybody.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the political arena, but having been in major organizations like health and education, it affects them as well, because all of a sudden money's not coming, programming is kind of not as big. They do stuff, but it kind of slows down. And I'm assuming that affects the community political scene as well, does it?
To some degree, there's still ongoing discussions that take place in all the different sectors. But effectively, when the when elections are called, like federal elections now, the government shuts down. And the deputy ministers, assistant deputy ministers, and top officials kind of run the show until there's an election and either a new government comes in or the same government, whatever that may be. But the flow of dollars and all that, it continues, but no new initiatives till after the elections. It's the same thing with the MCK. When we have our elections here, we shut down, the government shuts down, and maybe the executive director and a couple of other top officials are the ones that are there overseeing things for 2 days, 3 days, or whatever it may be. So that's basically the way things happen.
So it kind of filters through no matter where the election is.
Yeah.
Okay. We may as well move to more community scene, and I wanted to ask what is going to be the impact of the resignation of Karl Horn, and I guess we may as well just talk about it because the community's talking about it, and just wondering, what kind of impact that has on the MCK, but in the future as well of our community, because I think one of the things is you hear people say people need to role model, people need to do this, and is it a time that people are going to step up and start doing that?
Well, first of all, the MCK wishes all the best to Karl and his family. It's unfortunate that things have come to this time and this stage, but there are things that have happened. I'm not prepared to get into any details. I spoke to Karl yesterday morning after he delivered his letter of resignation, and he asked, that the MCK not, take him to task publicly or anything like that. And we agree. We agree it's not the right thing to do.
And he's done some good things, so you can't take that away from him.
And we're already beginning to notice, a day after in our discussions, or as a matter of fact, the same day. Well, who's going to do this now?
Right.
Now that Karl is no longer here, he was a hard worker and he was involved in many different areas. Had quite a number of portfolios, especially with the portfolio system that we developed just this year. It's taken a while to get into gear because it's not something we've ever done before. And now that it's structured, it's there. There are teams of people, and every council member, every chief has to take a lead in one of the portfolios. Well, he was a lead. He had a portfolio. He had a team, and then underneath his leadership, there were a number of different other sectors that he was responsible for. So somebody has to pick up the slack. So as I mentioned this morning in the interview I did with Paul, there's a void now.
Yeah.
So somebody has to step in. We have to share the workload. I'm going to probably have to step up and do, and I don't mind doing that because it has to get done until we have a replacement.
Right.
And that's going to happen within a 30-day period, according to the election law or by-election law. That's the way things go. But in the interim, and I don't know about long-term effects because not everybody is the same.
No.
I mean, we're all Mohawks and we're all Kanyogehaga, but we all think differently. We all have different approaches in all of that, which has to be respected. So, and in the long term, somebody else will have to step in, male or female, whatever that may be, and they'll have to take on their own persona as far as this is concerned, and they become really the different portfolios and the different tasks become something is reflective of themselves, who they are and what they believe in, And that's the same thing as with Carl. Carl believed in certain things, and he did. He became very effective in the last year or so.
Yeah, and I guess if you look at the system, this is the second time in a few, I guess not even a year, that your new system is being tested.
Yeah, and it's new. It's not the same circumstances, you know, with Lloyd Phillips resigning and taking on an administrative directorship. So it puts a bit of a strain on on the resources and what have you, and puts the community in a bit of a turmoil. But it's something that we have to deal with. We have to live with it, and find a way of doing the best that we can.
Do you think, and you've been in office long enough and you can judge, do you think the new system is set up to help that a little bit more than in previous years when someone left?
Yes, it is. It's a team approach in terms of the portfolio system that we have in place, and all resources being available. Not that they weren't before, but specialized resources being available, including people with writing skills, people with political knowledge, legal representation, within a team, and it makes it. I believe not. We're just sort of getting a sense of what's involved, but what I've seen so far seems to be working fairly well. So somebody coming in new. It shouldn't take long for them to be able to become kind of accustomed to what is all about. But then there's also the main table when you sit down, and there's different dynamics there. Not everybody's of the same mind.
Okay.
So, and there's debates and things that go back and forth. But you hope that you can come to a form of consensus along the way.
Mm-hmm. I have a question from a listener, Joe. Why wasn't the community able to make a decision or decide if Carl should have remained on council or seek help, leave of absence, etc.? And I guess in the vein that the people voted him in, so I guess I don't have an answer, but
well, in the election law itself, there's certain we'll call it responsibilities that whoever is running for office have to comply with them. And one of them is providing any information and background into any kind of legal issues that you may have had or having now and whatever. So you have to put that on as part of, and unfortunately in this situation, even though it was supposedly common knowledge out there,
You mean the Kahnawake knowledge,
right?
Yeah,
the Kahnawake knowledge that the person himself did not reveal that, did not put that on the table. So it became a matter of now looking at that and determining, through legal advice, what have you, whether or not this was a breaking of the law, and if it was, then therefore there has to be consequences for that. Of course, there's a lot of emotion that's attached to that, and a lot of, it's pretty hard for anybody to go through something like that. And also the colleagues that are involved in it too. It's difficult for us to make that determination. There's a court of public opinion, and I suppose that could have been taken to the public, but it could have dragged on and on and on and on,
Yeah.
Pros and cons and things of that nature. So as far as we're concerned, it was clear that there was a breach, and it had to be dealt with from that perspective.
And I guess what that explains is the context, that it wasn't just the actual electoral law or the circumstances. It went beyond that.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Tetewathá, Partyline Talkshow. I'm your host, Len Stacy. And if you're just joining us, Grand Chief Joe Norton's in studio with me, and we're doing the MCK Friday show. And I think we've talked about this, and it's the thing with Carl and the answer to me, is more clear. And if anything, I feel bad because I think he's done some very good work for the community, in particular in different sectors. And I respect his privacy. And I think it's important.
If I may, to a person on the council, we all expressed the same sentiments too, that he's a good person and that we wanted to see the best for him. He was provided with options. I won't go into all the details on that. He's asked that confidentiality be kept.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and. Well, all I can say is that he wasn't just casted adrift, okay? There were certain things that were suggested that could help him, and we still hope he'll take that path, So I contrary to what some people may be saying out there, we care about him. He's one of us. He's one of our community. He has children, he has a wife, he has grandchildren, or at least one now, and another one on the way. And he has parents, he has brothers and sisters, and I'm sure they all care about him, And, as Kahnawake, we're a family.
Yeah.
So we all have feelings towards someone like that.
Okay. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk. I wanted to talk about what's happening within the province of Quebec and any political issues at that level.
Yeah. Well, ironically, you would say that I just came out of a meeting with Quebec officials.
Oh, wow. How convenient. I did not know that, Joe. I did not.
Yeah. And I guess we're trying to renew discussions in a number of different areas. The thing is, it's a bit frustrating, but not overly. I don't hang my hat on having to meet with Quebec, the top Quebec, politicians like the minister, the prime minister, the premier of the province, and some of these key ministers. But if you're trying to do things with the government of Quebec, and I listen every day, I listen to what's going on in the province. I read the paper to see what they're doing and where they are at in their thinking towards their own people, because that has an effect on us too. And there's a lot of debate and turmoil and things that are going on. And I'm just wondering, when are we going to have the opportunity to begin a dialogue? And I've had one meeting with a key person in the ministry itself, the government of Quebec, and that was a gentleman. His name was, see if I can get this right, Christopher Skeeth, and he's a member of the National Assembly in Laval, Rosemere, in that district. And he's what they call the parliamentary secretary to the premier. That's a position, sort of a filtering system where all questions and comments come and go through him. So we had one meeting with him, and that was during the winter. That was in March, I believe it was. Late March somehow. And I was hoping from that meeting that he would go back, talk to the premier, and say, we better go to Kahnawake, we better see the people in Kahnawake, talk to the chief. Because he came in, we talked for maybe almost 2 hours, then it took him on a tour. And he was quite impressed with what Kahnawake was about. So since that time, however, there's been very little. There's the Minister of, they call Indigenous Affairs or Native Affairs in the province. It's a Madame Damour. Unfortunately, she's kind of unilingual in French only. And for us, that's, there's always ways around being able to have a discussion through interpretation, what have you. But it's a lot easier when you talk to somebody one-on-one, they speak the language, So I've met her on 2 occasions, just briefly. And that was in this past summer in Montreal, when we were there, when they were changing the name of Amherst Street, and then the same day in Lachine, when the same process was going on. So she was at these two events. We said hi and whatever, and she said, "Please send me a letter, to invite me to Kahnawake." And we've done that. I think we did that twice now, inviting her to come here. Yet she's not shown up, and we've asked the premier to be here too, so we can talk to him, or vice versa. We'll go to Quebec City. It's no big deal, and we'll meet with him over there and what have you. And we've outlined what we want to talk about. So there's been no reciprocation, as they call it, to those requests. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I guess we'll have to do, and there's a lot that's been going on with Mercy Bridge, with the highways, and things of that nature. There's a lot of things that are happening right now that cause us to have to meet, and we do meet at different levels. I'm not always involved in those meetings. We have teams of people. Again, we have the portfolio holders, and they're the ones that organize these meetings. They meet when they need me or they want me to come in. They'll call me and all that. Like today, for instance, I chose to enter into this meeting, and we had a list of items that we needed to address.
Let me just ask, what would be some of those items?
Cannabis.
Yes.
Right at the top of the list.
Okay.
Cannabis, and then gaming. And I'm trying to think what else. We discussed quite a range of just taxation in general. We had someone from the finance department representing finance that was at the meeting this morning to discuss, taxation on fuel, taxation just in general, trying to come to an arrangement and understanding, There's still outstanding assessments, and the government has pulled back from Revenue Quebec about going after the people in the community, but they keep asking, have you reached an agreement with Kahnawake? Have you reached a settlement? If not, well, we have to exercise our law in order to start getting revenue back from the people of Kahnawake. So in between that, we're looking at various ways of overcoming that. They're not all acceptable, let's put it that way.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to come into the community and say, what, we want to do this,
No. But I guess one of the things is, how do you move on these things? Because it's important. Right now it seems like it's at a stalemate, but they're not reciprocating.
Well, let's take this one instance about the taxation. I think they come there and they try to put pressure on us by saying, well, you know what, we got revenue, they're holding back, they're not going to do anything, but we don't know how long that's going to last. So can we come up with an? I think I know they feel they're holding the cards, and that they can pressure us, to come to an arrangement, come to an agreement with them, so that things can, they're looking for interim arrangements, an interim agreement with us, but interim can last for years. And I don't want to lock us into something that's going to cause us major problems. And to come back to the community and try to sell the community on something like this, it'll never work.
Never.
It requires collecting taxes off clients, customers, non-native customers, and then submitting it to Quebec. Quebec puts it into a fund to hold, to redistribute, for various activities in the community. Now, who's going to believe that?
Right.
You're looking at me, you're shaking your head right now. So
I'm not believing it,
if
right?
I can't convince you, don't ask me to go in the community and try to
convince some other people. That's not happening.
That ain't going to work,
But I guess the question is how long does this game go on? And I know taxation's been a long-standing issue.
Well, the one good thing is the comment that was made this morning that the present Minister of Finance, whom we did not meet with. We met with the previous Minister of Finance last year or the year before, previous to the election, Carlos Leitao, I think is his name. And, we were able to work something out where we had this delay. So it's spilled over now into a new government, but from what we understand, this minister is still willing to continue to do something. You know, let's have dialogue, go back to Kahnawake, find out certain things. I don't know if they've advised him about what they're proposing to us. And, you know, they're coming up with all kinds of reasons that, well, they'd have to change the law, you know, in order for this to happen. And we had our lawyer in there, and he basically said, they can do this, you know, without changing the law. There's a way within the law itself, and he's pointed that out to them, you know. So it becomes a little bit, legal, technical, and what have you. So we're going to continue to pursue that, you know. But we certainly are not going to come back and try to sell the community on an interim arrangement, you know. The governments, Quebec government and the federal government, they have the ability to do that within their parliaments.
Right.
And, you know, give the results back to everybody and say, this is what we're doing, you know. Over here, we can't do that. It's different, you know. We have to go back, and we're not built that way. We're not going to be ready to accept something, you know, and then try to slip it through. It can't work.
And I'm assuming they would know that that's not going to work with the people from this community.
Well, I think they're overestimating our ability to go and sell this.
Okay. Now I understand. On that note, let's take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Tetewathá, Partyline Talkshow. I'm your host, Lance Stacy, and today is MCK Friday, and I'm joined by the Grand Chief, Joe Norton. I guess I'm going to have to ask you this question on that topic. Do you see any kind of resolution coming? You know, are we going to stay in this kind of holding pattern in terms of taxation?
There has to be a solution forthcoming, and it's got to be favorable to us. It has to be equitable. It has to be fair. And the thing is, there has to be cooperation amongst ourselves, first and foremost. If we have an understanding about what we need to do, you know, and how we're going to do it, and going forth to the provincial government, and we're forgetting there's a federal side of it too, because they collect GST and whatever else, and there's a harmonization between federal and provincial on that. So they're a third party that we need to, and it's part of, I would say, the overall realignment, if you want to call it that, between Kahnawake, Quebec, and the federal government. Those kinds of tri-party discussions have to take place. Can't be just one way. And it brings in the whole argument about the transfer of responsibility from the federal government to the provincial government. And we've had that long-standing argument about that Canada had no right to do that, you know. And we see it in health services, education, you know, in all the different sectors where there was a unilateral situation, federal and native. It's not just ourselves, it's right across the country. Now, that's going to probably require a very special, specific agreement. And this is where it's going to take a lot of hard work and sticking to our guns, sticking to our position, not giving in. There could be some interim solutions, but everything has to be considered, you know, long-term, with the thought in mind that even those long-term don't last forever. Because, you know, our needs, our demands change as time goes on. So does the federal government. And it's all going to be based on, as far as I can see, where we're starting from is a question that we're allies. It's nation to nation, government to government, you know, and all the language that they've been using. Well, this is the way we interpret that. This is what it means to us. So it starts with that, the basics, then it grows into all these different sectors, because this community is growing.
Yeah.
We're planning to do all kinds of things where it requires some kind of relationship with the federal government, provincial government, even the U.S. government, even internationally. You know, there may be, just to let you know, there's I've been in contact with, and I've had an opportunity to meet with representatives from Cuba.
Oh, really?
In the area of health. They would like to, and they're in Canada right now. They actually have an agreement out in Manitoba with a community, with a native community out there. They're asking Kahnawake to participate and have their doctors, or at least a doctor, come here and provide the, I guess, the health services that they have in Cuba. I don't know if people realize there's such a tremendous wealth of health services that are recognized internationally. They're all over the place providing that, you know. So they want to come, they want to come into Canada, and they want to start relationships, you know, with Indigenous people. So I've already made some introductions to the Cattery Hospital. I gave them some information, so they're looking at that. So whether that works or not, you know, we don't know. Somewhere down the road, that might be something that we may accept, you know, becoming a center for health services that are based not necessarily from the province of Quebec, you know.
It's an interesting topic because I remember quite a few years ago there was a discussion about the community becoming a training facility, and a training facility for any kind of topic, because this community is a leader in many, many disciplines and areas. And you know, I often wondered why that went to the backside, because I always thought it was a great idea because it kind of showcases what we're about. And I know sometimes, having worked in the community for so many years, people here may not think a lot about what some of our people do, but boy, you go out and these people think we're the greatest thing, you know, as a community, whether it's on the political level or education or language or, you know, the health sector, that I think we have so much that we could be offering and giving, and in return bring revenue back to the community.
Well, little by little we can revive that. I mean, going back quite a few numbers of years ago, I can recall our capital services going out to British Columbia on a contract to help them learn how to install their own water and sewer service in, I think it was Merritt, British Columbia. So, you know, that was, to me, that was the beginning of something. We should have continued that, you know.
It just seems like a different type of revenue generation, plus spotlighting some key leadership in the community, and there's tons of areas.
Well, this past week, didn't they have the
Olympics?
The Olympics, the fire. Yeah. So I mean, that's recognition for the community that we have top-notch people here.
Exactly, and I think sometimes we don't cherish that or value that enough to be saying, you know, look at this is what other communities can do. And you've traveled extensively. I've traveled extensively to lots of First Nations communities, and it's nothing compared to this community.
No.
And a lot of areas.
Well, you know, we have to take into consideration the reason why we do what we do is our location, and having to rub noses every day with our non-native brothers and sisters who come through here, we provide them services too, security services, policing, you know, things of that nature, keeping the highways clean, you know, 132, 138, providing services to make sure Mercier Bridge is proper.
And we always have to have a kudos out to our Mercier Bridge people, because if it wasn't for them, sometimes it would end up being like some of the other Montreal bridges where it's years and years of construction, just saying, you know.
So we do have a lot of expertise that has grown over time period in terms of what we need here, our requirements, you know.
I have a comment just from just a clarification. I said Olympics, and my apologies, but it was the Water Operators Conference, and which includes a Water Olympics. It's not the fire brigade. So I just to clarify. Thanks, Martin. but it's important, because when I saw that on TV, it was like, oh wow. I mean, you don't think much about water and sewer outside if it's functioning or not functioning, but to know that there's a quality standard that, you know, that the workers have to do. I thought, wow, that's pretty much kudos, you know?
Yeah.
And again, you know, we're always looking for revenue generation. You know, as a community, maybe it's time we start putting our resources and people out there, and again, bringing something, you know, that benefits everyone within the community.
There's probably certain things that we're missing in this discussion about, you know, people who have gone elsewhere to from here
Yeah.
to put on clinics or different things like that, like for the whole diabetes.
Yes.
The
KSDPP.
yeah, the evolution of that
Yeah.
here and where it's gone right across the country. So we have to really acknowledge that we are the center of a lot of different things, and it's time to really maybe consolidate that as much as possible.
It was just a thought or thinking, and it's on the topic because we're always looking for ideas. We even at one point, I'm going a little bit back too, was same thing in sports. We're leaders in a lot of different ways, and again that could be something, a sports training facility or something. And every sport, not just talking our sport lacrosse, but every other kind of thing.
Speaking of lacrosse.
Speaking of lacrosse.
Yeah, the world, what is it called? The world...
Indoor lacrosse.
Indoor lacrosse is taking place out in British Columbia.
Yeah, in Langley, yeah. And again, 2 weeks ago we held the President's Cup here, and nothing but great things. And it's hard for me to say that because I was part of the host committee, but we did get a lot of great feedback and a lot of good work. And I was so impressed. I'm a big sports fan. Like, people don't know that, but the level of lacrosse was unbelievable. I saw the last time we hosted, and I get to see some of the senior teams, but just unbelievable in terms of what's out there.
Yeah, so what's going on in Langley right now is a forerunner to what's going to happen next year in Ireland, Limerick, Ireland.
Yes,
it's going to be there, and I have some. I've been to Ireland like last year, this past year, and 2 years previous to that. And while I was there, I found out that it was
they're hosting the next.
They're
one.
hosting the next one, and I began talking to some of the officials there about it in government, and I mentioned to them about the difficulty our Iroquois nationals have in traveling on their passports. So since that time, there's been a lot of discussion that's gone on to have them officially recognize those passports. I don't know how far it's going to go, but I know they're not going to have problems in Ireland next year.
Which is good, because I know when Kenneth Deere comes on, and every time there's an international lacrosse festival, male or female, that's always my first question: what kind of passports are they traveling on? Because it's been so difficult.
There's at least one official from Ireland who's in Vancouver right now, and he's with the Lacrosse Ireland, I think is what they're called. So he's also there to talk about, the arrangements that need to be made for next year. And I'm hoping that will be, because Ireland is still at least part of the European Union, half of it anyway, will be, and that may open the door to the European Union for them to begin to acknowledge, that, because as far as I'm concerned, the Indigenous people in Canada, the United States, they're very well received and revered in Europe. I've been to Europe and I've seen that myself there.
Again, that's another layer, because when we talk about border crossing and we talk about passports and that's another ongoing topic that we haven't been hearing much about.
No.
So another possibility of gaining entry to another country.
Well, one day maybe we'll all be using Haudenosaunee passports.
I think that would be ideal, right?
Yeah.
That would be ideal.
Exactly.
We have about a minute and a half left. Are there any other topics on the political level, maybe something within the community that might be worth highlighting?
Well, at the moment, I guess there's a lot. There's just too much to try and pinpoint and say specifically what needs to be dealt with. And in the between now and the new year, I'm sure there's a lot of things that will be discussed. I mean, there's the whole issue of asbestos.
Yes.
That hasn't gone away, and there's still a need to resolve that in one way or another, and come up with the kinds of regulations that are required in order for that not to happen again.
And I think that was the community's biggest question.
Yeah.
How did it start? How did it get
Yeah.
to that? And, and I guess exploring processes and procedures of, for the future. So it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's very, I would say, upfront and clear that within the MCK operations and all of that, there's a responsibility we have. And we haven't denied that. That's why we've had to move to do what we have to do to help people, in that particular situation. And, this latest issue with the resignation on the council, and there's a need also to beef up, if you will, the requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe one last word is it points out within the community itself, this is not just an issue about Carl Horn.
No, it's not.
It's community wide.
Yeah.
We have that probably every night, every day, and and we should be cognizant of that.
And trying to help people instead
as much as possible.
as much as we can.
Instead of vilifying them and wishing them wishing them bad things instead of saying, let's help them.
Okay. Thank you so much, Grand
pleasure.
Chief, for joining me today. And up next with the 1 o'clock news is Jim Connell. Have a great weekend, everybody. Onigiwahi.
Oh, no.